Witnesses, very constructive testimony. Appreciate that on the existing programs as well as the two proposed rules by the SBA. And I appreciate the testimony in regards to the Community Advantage program. It clearly is doing a better job in reaching the underserved communities and with small businesses. What is the advantage of it being made permanent? The administration did expand its reach by action earlier this year. What additional advantage would there be if this is a permanent program? Mr. Villarreal?
Thank you for the question, Senator. So the first and foremost thing is, while SBA did extend the program, at that time, I think it was 28 months, so now it's less than 2 years. And we've heard the word prudent lending go around a lot. And if you are a mission lender and see that a program has a sunset of now 22 months or 23 months, it doesn't make any sense to make that investment to become an SBA Community Advantage lender, because it takes a lot of resources to do that, and it takes time to ramp up. Even in the SBA's proposed rule change, they talked about the ramp-up period for SBLCs. So the most critical one is that it gives security to a lender in that it knows the program is going to be around. So that's the primary one. So then it can start to build a team around that and start to build a marketing strategy to get to those. I think the other one, particularly as it's proposed, Senator, is it allows a greater guarantee for loans under 150 to 90%, and then for loans from 150 to 350 of 80%. And why is this important? A lot of the community advantage lenders are smaller lenders that can be capital restrained. So the ability to take that guarantee and sell it in the secondary market and recapitalize and get back, if you do a $100,000 loan and you get back $90,000, you can continue to recycle that money in your community. And these smaller community advantage lenders are not in that wheel of having to go out and continuously fundraise and get more money. So those are two critical things that a permanency will do, particularly the way it's written. It will allow community advantage lenders to not have to go out and fundraise as much and really make an impact in their community.
Several of you have mentioned the progress we've made in the 7A programs in reaching the traditionally underserved communities, and we have made progress. But one trend line appears to be just the opposite. That is the size of the loans. Over the years, the average size of a 7A loan has grown in dollar amount, not smaller. And as we know, the smaller small businesses are the ones who are always more challenged to have the capacity to get a loan. What can we do to target the program more to the smaller small businesses in traditionally underserved communities? Mr. Gaines, you have some thoughts on that?
Well, thank you again, Senator. I appreciate that question. I think there's certainly a few ideas that we can certainly think about right off the bat there, because again, we're dealing with, I'm going to say small micro businesses is probably the best term I would use. I would say right off the bat, in regards to making it easier, of course, we all know there's importance to have regulation, but really the process that we go through in terms of really underwriting the loan to really make it simpler from the standpoint of actually making it easier to underwrite the loan, makes it quicker for the borrower, but also makes it quicker for the lender to basically do the work that they need to do to get those funds out to the borrower. So I would say one thing right off the bat would be simpler, I won't say simpler regulation, but I'll say simpler documentation from that standpoint to make it easy to happen. What other things we could probably, or other recommendations that could be out there to make it easier for it, for smaller business loans? I think we need to continue to further the outreach that we do as well in regards to working with small businesses, just so they know, because we're sometimes challenged by language barriers. I'll say, speaking briefly, in terms of Wisconsin, 2/3 of our business owners are ladies. We want to make sure that we're doing everything we can to really kind of bridge those cultural divides and really work hard to communicate with folks from a marketing perspective, so it makes it easier for small business to understand who we are, what we do, and just as important, work with us.
Thank you. Ms. Murphy, I want to give a shout out to what you've been able to do in the veteran community. It shows that if you really want to make a difference, if you do the outreach, you can reach a community that has had a challenge in reaching services. So tell us your secret. How did you get those good results in the veteran community?
Thank you, Chairman Cardin. So what we did was recognize that many of our underserved borrowers want to work with somebody that they feel that they have a shared experience with, someone that they have something in common. And when we looked at it, I come from a long-standing military family tradition, and I'll give the shout out to my daughter who's currently serving in Guam. What we realized was that when we started putting teams together of veterans and then started doing outreach to veteran organizations, having that common experience, all of a sudden our veterans were willing to check the box to say, yes, I'm a veteran, yes, here's my DD 214, yes, I now have the advantage of the no fee for my veteran loan, because they felt comfortable with that person. So we've expanded that to now include veteran underwriters. We are looking at other operations positions at this point and training veterans who are now separating from service and training them up in SBA lending. And we're looking to replicate this since we had that success this year. We launched this on January 1st of 2022. So we're not even a full year into it and tripled it. So now we're looking to replicate what we did and start doing that with other underserved markets.
Thank you. Mr. Schwallenbach, I just really want to compliment you on your testimony as to the way you framed it. I have looked forward to your specific recommendations in regards to modifications of the proposed rule to deal with the guardrails and concerns that you expressed. You seem very positive about SBA expanding competition, but raised an issue we're all concerned about, and that is having adequate protection and accountability. So we look forward to your specific recommendations in that area.
Right. So there's a bit of a gap here. And thank you for the question, Chairman Cardin. So many of the participants in the PPP were traditional depository institutions federally regulated by the Treasury Department, OCC, and on, with ample experience complying with Bank Secrecy Act, Know Your Customer Act, or Know Your Customer requirements. And the PPP was a big experiment in expanding participation to fintech lenders. And to their great credit, they played a major role in helping a lot of underserved communities and minority-owned and other businesses that had trouble accessing capital get PPP loans. The big downside is a lot of these fintechs just kind of open the floodgates to fraud. And many of these fintechs and their supporting companies like Blue Acorn and Womply, they really had no experience or very little experience complying with the Bank Secrecy Act and Know Your Customer requirements prior to the PPP, and suddenly they're processing tens of billions of loan applications. And I won't go into great detail, but the House Select Subcommittee report is very disturbing. But really what it points to is that the SBA wasn't doing its own due diligence at the front end in allowing many of these companies to participate. So one thing I did lay out in my testimony is that we need to have sufficient criteria when evaluating companies that want to participate in these programs. Do they have a track record of complying with the Bank Secrecy Act, or have they demonstrated that they can comply with the Bank Secrecy Act? And does the SBA have the capacity to vet them at the front end and then to continually monitor them over time to make sure they're just not passing the test at the front end and then throwing away all their anti-fraud resources to save a buck later on? And the Select Subcommittee's report goes into great detail about how some of these companies, when they started to flag a number of loans as suspicious and potentially fraudulent, cut back on their automated systems for processing loans. Some of them were throwing reviewers into processing loans without any training at all in looking for signs of potential fraud. So, at the SBA side, you need to have sufficient criteria so that these companies that aren't regulated by the Treasury Department or OCC or other federal entities can meet the standards that traditional banks and credit unions have to meet when it comes to knowing your customer. The SBA itself flagged hundreds of thousands of loans as potentially fraudulent because it found signs that they were not active businesses before February 15th, 2020. If these lenders were doing their Know Your Customer requirements properly, they would know if these loan applicants existed, before February 15th. It's a very basic thing. So, a lot of this is at SBA and making sure that the lenders who participate and their supporting companies, that's a really key part of this, comply with these standards and that the standards are high enough.
Thank you. Senator Marshall.
Great. Thank you, Chairman, and thanks, Ranking Member, very much. And Mr. Schwellenbach,